And welcome back to the tavern. I am your host, James. We have our co host here, Matt, who is finally back, hopefully with us on a consistent period of time.
Yes.
And our wonderful guest for the evening, Tim from Knights and Nerds podcast. So say hello, Tim.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, if you're new to the tavern here, one thing we do like to tell people is this is a very chill stream. Please ask your questions, throw comments, be silly, have fun in the chat. This is legitimately three guys or gals, depending on who's on, sitting around a bar, BSing about D&D. And tonight, not only will we be talking about the Knights and Nerds podcast and the ideas of world building and plot hooks, but we're also going to be guessing what that monster is in the corner there. So at 9:30, we're probably about 9:40 since we're starting a little late because the bartender was taking forever to pour the beer. And we'll ask that question. So if you have an idea what it is, pop it in the chat down there, and then that'll randomize us. We'll go through and we'll see at that moment which one has the correct one. And just a heads up, don't think it's exactly what you think it is.
I accidentally cheated. I saw it in one of the messages with
Oh
Tabletop
yeah,
Misfits
that's
account.
fine. You can give it away when we
No,
give
I
it.
know what it is this time.
Yeah. So one
Last
thing I
last time
love.
it was some sort of strange rainbow unicorn thing. That was
Oh
pretty
the
cool.
yeah the Kyrene.
Yeah, that was neat.
Yeah,
But anyway,
that was a fun one. This is a little more sinister than the Kyrene. We'll go with that.
Said monster. I picked a monster.
There's nothing wrong with that. We had our wonderful friend Brina. She's an amazing artist. She picked the Kyrene, and I was like, oh, this so matches you, because she's so bubbly and exciting and happy. And then I'm like, and then knowing you're a game master, you pick this, and I was like, oh yes, this is definitely game master material. So, um, yeah. So one thing I do like to ask all of our guests, and we do pride ourselves that every week we have a new guest, that there's three questions. One, how long have you been playing D&D? Two, why did you get into it? And three, when did you decide that, I don't want to be a player anymore. I'm going to pick up game mastering. So if you can just answer those real quick for me.
Hmm. Okay. Sorry, I have a very short memory. So the first one is when did I start, or
Yeah,
how
when
long?
or how long
yeah,
have you been
Oh,
playing
when?
it?
Okay.
one at a time, James.
So I started, I think, when like second edition was still pretty prevalent, and I was maybe just 13 or 14 years old. So that's
Okay.
probably uh math a number of years ago.
A number of years ago.
More than
And
two, less than a million.
There you go.
yeah, it's in that, it's somewhere in between. Um, I remember my good friend was like explaining the concept of a role playing game to me, like a game that you play with dice but no board necessarily. And I was like, so what do you do? And they're like, whatever you want, man. And I was like, I don't know. So I remember playing, and I remember Thaco was a thing. And then there's a long hiatus. We got into Warhammer. That made a bit more sense to me. And
Oh God, don't get me started.
I played a Skaven army.
Oh, me
Um,
too.
nice. Did you have like the Vermin Lords in that at that point?
Yeah, I did, and I have a new Vermin Lord who's been professionally painted because I'm not that good a painter. But yes,
Ooh,
uh,
tell me, is Skitterleap still a spell?
yes, it is. But I think it's an 8. I think they call it something different these days. And is it 5th edition we're on now? I haven't played since before the COVIDs. So it's been a while. But yeah, Skitterleap, I think they changed the name of it, but it lets them teleport quite a ways, and it's pretty nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for our
Yeah.
people like me who have never played Warhammer, what is a Skaven?
Oh,
Uh
Skaven's a rat man.
Oh, the rat
Ratman.
people. Okay,
So
Yeah.
they're subterranean uh race of cowardly mutated rat people.
Yeah.
kind of
And
sounds like
they
kobolds.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild because like the emperor, you know, the ruler of mankind and stuff, it's actually legal to know that they exist, and they severely outnumber humans. They are horrible, just horrible things, and nobody's allowed to know about them. If they invade your town and you survive, they just execute you when it's all over because they don't want people knowing about this. Um, they're very cool.
If you played, oh, what was that? There was like a Left 4 Dead style Warhammer video game that used the Skaven.
Yeah, Vermintide.
Vermintide, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and the thing about the Skaven is they're all very cowardly. So if you kill the army's general, they all have very low morale, and so they usually end up fleeing very quickly. So the whole goal of the Skaven is to like get into combat as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Because if you take too much missile fire crossing the battlefield, it's going to induce panic checks, and the more panic checks you do, the more you will panic. It's almost like you can't go like as a Skaven player, you can't go for a full game without having somebody run away. Like if nobody runs, it's kind of like, yeah.
So I have to ask you, I play House Pestilence. So do you believe that the Great Horned Rat exists, or is the Great Horned Rat Nurgle?
Whoa.
Because they actually now have added to House Pestilence Nurgle as a keyword, and they can actually play in Nurgle armies. And you can run a Great Unclean One with your Skaven now, which I do, which is pretty sick.
That blows my mind.
With Skaven with disgustingly resilient, it's pretty good.
I feel like with like just to sort of circle back to the Vermin Lord, like the Vermin Lord's a demon, and I feel like a demon is kind of like a part of the larger deity. So I feel like the Great Horde Rat has got to exist in some capacity, right?
Yeah, and you know, I'm kind of torn about does this like fifth Chaos Lord, or this extra Chaos Lord that is the Great Horned Rat, is he real, or are the Skaven just really stupid and they've been worshiping Nurgle for millennia and just don't know it, you know? Because they're both great. Especially we'll get back on D&D in a minute, but with the new lore, the Age of Sigmar lore, right? Since the world ended and everything is remade and new. Basically what happened is Archon got the Black Pyramid working, and he was going to destroy everything. The only reason that anything still existed is the Skaven started burrowing because they could sense warpstone, and they basically chewed the wires on the Black Pyramid so that it didn't work well. So the Skaven unintentionally saved everything.
Wow.
That's crazy.
They're very dumb, but
I'm gonna look up these creatures because, like, now I'm like, oh, can I use these in my games? Because they seem wicked. Like, I would have
the way that they talk is amazing. You know, everything is like, must kill man, very, very smart. I mean, they just do all this weird double talk, and they're all awful.
I think one of the main tactics of the Skaven army was to buy like the lowest ineffective combat unit. That they were dirt cheap. Like everybody's got a point allowance, and you buy like just hordes and hordes of these cannon fodder, basically. And the point is to like bog down the enemy soldiers, and then you have the actual elite units go around the sides, and either like the elite units being guys with flamethrowers. And just, and like you don't care if you hit your own guys because they're not combat effective. The point is for them to get in the way,
right?
But you position your better stuff around the sides and flank them, or
and I will say, as Pestilence, we don't get that. We get Plague Monks, and that's about it. We just have hordes and hordes of Plague Monks with like the occasional like warp fire thrower or something, but we don't get any of the cool like rattling guns or any of that stuff. But you're right. Skaven are they're super jokes.
They were fun. I had a lot of fun with the Vermin Lords because like in that edition you could take more than one, and they were, I think, 4th level spellcast Skitterleap. So right off the bat you have this gigantic demon who can just teleport itself into the back ranks of any enemy unit it wanted to and start doing some very bad stuff. I was big into like Deathmaster Snitch and like Clan Eshin and the Gutter Runners, all that kind of stuff. So that occupied a lot of my time and money.
Sorry,
that sounds to me like one of those things like diving into that would just make my lore even more deep because
Oh,
it like
it's so bad though because everybody that played before Age of Sigmar hates all of the new lore because they changed it and they made everything different and bad.
so
Even though
kind
it's
of the same thing we're running into with the new editions of Dungeons and Dragons where they're changing how
no, it's
orcs
even
are and
worse.
drow are and stuff like that.
It's even worse
Oh
because
man.
they like 40K and Warhammer had this like unofficial official tie where the emperor of the planet that Warhammer Fantasy is on was a lost space marine primarch from 40K. And now they've officially said no, but they didn't do it because the lore held up. They did it because now they can copyright both things, keep them separate intellectual properties, and make money. And like, I'm not allowed to call my Space Marines anymore. Now they're Adeptus Astartes because you can't copyright the word Space Marine, but you
Sounds like
can
a
copyright Adeptus Astartes.
sounds like a very Games Workshop thing to do.
It is the
Yeah,
most TW
Games
thing.
Workshop thing to do.
They have become
Yeah.
more Games Workshopy than they used to be.
Oh yeah.
So
Um,
yeah, I didn't play D&D basically like once I got into Warhammer and then out of Warhammer. I didn't play it again until basically I was done university and I was starting to listen to podcasts. And one podcast I listened to was Nerd Poker, and they were playing fourth edition and they were having so much fun. I was like, this is awesome. And I didn't know that I was supposed to hate fourth edition immediately. But a lot of people on Reddit told me that I should. But anyway, so that's how I cut my teeth as a dungeon master. I found some used copies of the books and I got some friends to play. And I was the DM from that point on.
Yep.
Starting in
I'm right there with you, Tim. My first D&D game was a 4E game, and I didn't know that I was supposed to hate 4E, and I thought it was fine. And then everybody was like, "No, you have to like 3.5 better." It's like, okay.
So we did a show on this just a couple weeks ago with our good friends over at C4 Labs. They're one of their guys that works with them, and we broke down like specific things that different uh, editions or different games could be utilized in your game, and it made it a lot better. And like three of the things that were brought up about Fourth E, I was like, I use these, but I didn't know that's where they came from. Like,
Yeah, and
so
honestly, I think it's part of the wargamer in me that likes like the daily encounter and at wills. Like that's so simple, just the terminology of it, and I can
mhm.
have little cards made up with that on it, and that appealed to me a lot. I
And I
understand
can
that people are
see
like it's a
that.
little number crunchy, but and it's a little
yeah,
RPG, but I don't know.
And I
yeah.
think that was the main thing. And after talking to a bunch of people about like why fourth edition was created and why it kind of started to go downhill for a bit, and it was really they were trying. There was this thought that they were going to try to connect it to the video game industry, and they were going to connect it to the minis that they were already in process of making, and they wanted it to all work together like that. And the story side of things was kind of stepped away a little bit from it. But if you're a game master and you wanted to run a story, it wouldn't have changed anything. You were still going to tell the same story. You're just going to tell it with miniatures now and with all that stuff. And now we use that anyway. So really, to me, after reading through fourth edition and after reading through pieces of fourth edition that I never played, and I was like, you know, as much as everybody hated the thing, there were good points of it, and I like certain pieces of it. The idea of skill challenges, where you can do group skill challenges, that kind of thing. I was trying to think of another one that I was thinking about. I'd have to go back to my notes, but I won't do that right now. But there are different things within fourth edition that I was really impressed by, and I was like, okay, these are really cool ideas. Um, so, but yeah,
Yeah,
What do
I
you?
liked. Yeah, I like the like the bloodied
mm-hmm.
aspect for monsters. You know, it
Yeah.
gives it's a built-in way to shake up an encounter,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you pass like when a monster passes a certain point of damage, it starts to behave differently, which I
Yeah,
think is pretty cool.
I
It
think
makes
it makes
sense,
it a
DMs
right?
little
it.
bit more of a natural feeling to it, right? So then
Hmm.
it's kind of how they did the whole or legendary monsters, or what is the other one? Mythic, I think, is the one where if it goes to a certain level, then it changes. Um, I think that's a really neat. And then I know Matt Colville took that and kind of broke off and did his own thing with it, and that kind of grew as well on that end. But no, those types of things I love to use because I think those are really fun ways to not only change up the monotony of combat in D&D, but also shifts up that combat so it's a little more exciting too because you're like, oh, hey, something's changed. Now I gotta react quicker and I have to think of another way of doing things. And I don't know, I just think that keeps the players a little bit more on their toes and it allows the combat to feel a little more fluid. It also can be a good time to be like, hey, it's time to go. Like, I'm out and run away as a monster. Because
Like Tim, do you remember Passive Stealer? Do you remember that old feat that you could do from 4?
Which one was it? Sorry.
Pacifist healer. So where if you were a healer and if you struck something that was, I think, at less than half health, it stunned you for a round. And
I don't remember that at all. That sounds cool.
it was really cool because you got a lot of bonus on your heals, but you once that thing got to bloodied, you pulled back and you had to be like, sorry guys, like I'm out. But I miss stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like there was a lot more of it. Like we don't have witches anymore in 5e. And we had witches and battle masters and scions, that they've just completely gotten rid of. Scions were a pain in the butt, but I miss that stuff.
Yeah.
I think part of that problem is that with scions and things like that or with witches, I guess would be the one in battle masters, those types of things. That's when they did the prestige classes and you had the additional adjustment classes and those types of things. And you really had to work to get to those. It wasn't like, at
Battlemaster was a starting class.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, and Witch was as well. There were prestige class and Epic Destinies is I think what you're talking about, but there was some like scions were a thing. But Tim, I mean, if you GM'd a lot of 4th edition, I mean, a scion's turn would take 20 minutes while they put all their little markers on the board of all their mind clouds and stuff.
Yeah.
So what do you think about 5th? I mean, do you like it as a GM? Are you glad that it happened? Are you kind of reticent? Do you still use it? That kind of thing.
I mean, I like it a lot. It's certainly, an imperfect system, but I mean, I prefer the sort of the theater of the mind to the. If I could do theater, like if I had to choose between theater of the mind and like the 4th edition, like really nuts and bolts tactical stuff, I would prefer to do the theater of the mind kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean it's great. I think it seems to me that it was made to introduce a wider audience to be able to play, to be able to start. And then maybe from there, I don't know if this is just purely conjecture, but maybe the roadmap is to introduce get the sort of this really beginner friendly system out to as many people as possible, foster community, and then you can start building, more complex and nuanced system from there. I'm having a great time with it. It's hard to believe it's been out for as long as it has been. It doesn't to me seem like that long.
It doesn't.
It's changing up now. So I mean, we've got the new multiverse of monsters, the multiverse, and all that's coming out, and that's going to shift up how the expanded version is going to work and all that.
I 100% agree with your take, Tim. I think it's been great for D&D as a whole. I think that it's been great for the role-playing community. I think there's going to be a lot of old guys who, like us, who've been playing for a lot longer that we're going to gripe every now and then. But just the ability to find a game, you can find D&D to play anywhere. The ease of access. My wife she played one game of 3.5, and I thought she was never going to play another board game again because she made some kind of alchemist, like this incredibly specific alchemist class. And she's like, I need you to tell me what to do. And I was like, I got no idea. I've never heard of that class. I have no idea how the mechanics work. Like You're on your own. Yeah. Where with 5e, she can do her RP and she's got her spells and, it's a lot better. Which makes my experience better because I can play with people that I like and enjoy playing with more. I think it's great. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head with what they were doing. And yeah, maybe one of these days we get 5.5. It's got a little bit extra stank on it or something, But
We'll see. Like I said, I think the biggest thing with 5e though that people don't think too far into it, and I think us as writers for a like a
Third
third
party.
edition supplement, yeah, third party
Mhm.
supplement. I think that's the main thing 5e has that most of the other versions, and it might not be that they didn't have it, it just wasn't as widespread and known. You
Yeah.
know, taking the technology of how we've developed things and like, and now seeing them taking some of those third party things and making them their own and shifting them around. There's just so much, and then with the whole idea of Patreon and you can just build whatever you want. Those have goods and bads personally, I think, because unless you've play tested things hundreds and hundreds of times, you're never going to get an item strong enough or weak enough that you need and those types of things. But for people that are just looking for ideas, those are great options. And I don't think I don't think D&D is going to go anywhere anytime soon backwards. I think we're just going to continue to grow more and
Hope
more.
so.
Yeah,
I really do.
and I think the entertainment industry is starting to see that. I think is the biggest thing.
Yeah, that I hate to say this, but that big beautiful bastard Henry Cavill has done a lot of good. a
Big
lot of
beautiful
good,
bastard.
a lot of good for no one should be that good at games and also nerdy and also that attractive.
Yeah,
But he's brought a lot to the forefront. You know, Joe Manganiello,
yeah.
Travis Willingham even kind of falls in that. Did you guys know he was in Secondhand Lions with Robert
I
De
did.
Niro
I did
or
not.
Robert Duvall? He was one of the thugs that Robert Duvall beats up. If
Okay.
you look in the background in the scene where he's beating up all the young kids in the diner,
Yeah,
Travis Willingham is there
that's
in a
That's
leather jacket.
funny.
Yeah.
When he's beating them up and also giving them like a life lesson speech.
Yes.
Wow.
Very Robert Duvall thing to do.
I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, I didn't realize this at first because, like I said, huge comic book fan, huge Marvel fan, and then realizing that Joe Manganiello was literally in the first Spider-Man too, and I was like, I couldn't believe that at first, and I was like, huh, look at that. It
My
is
first
kind of
exposure to
neat.
him was True Blood because my
I've
wife
never watched True
loved True
Blood.
Blood.
I've never watched True Blood.
My wife loves it. And that's why we know Joe Manganiello, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't know that whole thing. My first introduction to him was, like I said, Spider Man, and then How I Met Your Mother, and then the just craze of female hormones going everywhere with Magic Mike. Like I was like, I've never watched this thing,
Oh
but
yeah,
everybody talks about the man.
I forgot about Magic Mike.
And I was like, whatever. And then he started showing up everywhere on D&D. Like D&D was boom as soon as D&D. But it's weird because uh, not until I started getting into the professional side of things and talking to people and networking did I even know half of these people. Like there's this A-list, this large group of people who I call them the inner circle of D&D because they don't just have time; they have the money to just do what they want with it. And finding out that those people exist was kind of a shocker and inspiring at the same time. Because you're like, wow, no matter if you've got 10 cents in your bank account or $10 million in your bank
Yeah,
account, you can still play D&D. you know,
yeah.
and
I don't know if you guys remember this or if you were even watching YouTube back in those days. I live on YouTube and Twitch. Um, the first time I saw Chris Perkins DMing for the guys that do Robot Chicken, I was like, oh my God, like this is it. Like D&D has reached its pinnacle. Like Robot Chicken, the guys from Robot Chicken are playing D&D, not realizing they've probably all been playing D&D since they were like 15.
right, it's like when you hear Shaggy from Scooby Doo, and now he's like one of the largest
Oh
influences
yeah.
for D&D because Matt Millard is just blowing up the world right now when it comes to D&D.
Yeah. Our
Yeah,
galactic overlord Shaggy.
yeah, Overlord Shaggy. I actually found that on a Christmas or not Christmas, a Halloween one shot where you could, play the monster as Shaggy, and it's this warlock Shaggy, and I was like, huh, kind of want to try that sometime. So, but yeah, we've definitely jumped down a rabbit hole tonight. It's all right.
There's so many rabbit
That's all right.
holes.
So many
Warhammer
rabbit
just
holes.
ruins everything.
Ruined your bank
I'm
account.
sorry for bringing it up.
Ruined your box.
Tiny
That's what it
plastic
is.
toys are the worst. I still buy more of them. I just bought some Death Guard the other day.
I was like, you live with you. You literally make tiny plastic toys.
I know.
On a daily basis.
I know, but I still buy Games Workshop because they look cool.
There was
and
a
I want to
guy.
support the hobby.
There was a guy at the game store where I played and bought all my stuff. And he painted this incredible corn demon army, and it was all red, varying shades of red. And he spent hours and hours and hours painting it, and it looked just stunning. And he would be just, he's the shop owner and also, doing his own thing. So he would be, hanging out in the store, painting away. And I remember one day he came back to one of the tables in the back, and he's like, "Oh, cool army setup you got going, but why are all the guys pink?" And we're like, "They're gray." And he's like, "Oh
no." So Tim, have you heard the biggest change that they made that made so many people so mad between
Confidently
Aegis
say
and Marnie?
no. I have not.
I'm gonna say no.
No more square bases. They took the square bases away. Everything's on round now. No. Infuriating. And then I'll be damned now they're not releasing a whole new game called Old World, and everything's going back to square bases. I don't know what to do anymore.
I feel like they didn't focus group that one enough.
It's just such a weird change to make too. But anyway, we're killing James's D&D vibe here with.
Oh right, sorry. Yeah, to answer your third question, I just kind of slid into the role of DM by default.
Yeah, no, it's no. That's the thing is everybody does it. You go to the bar, you sit down, you have a drink, you start talking, and then the rabbit hole just chases you some other direction.
Yeah, God, it's so wild.
And it's funny because this is kind of how this whole stream even was developed. Is I was sitting there with a buddy of mine, and we'd go on Mondays and get Steal the Cup from our local bar, and I was like, I wonder if people would enjoy just talking D&D. And then I realized that I've been doing this with a friend of mine for 2.5 hours every Monday, and I was like, apparently somebody enjoys this because I do. And then Corey, our old co-host, decided to. He said the same thing. He's like, yeah, I just want to get on stream and chat about D&D, and that's kind of where this whole thing started. And then we randomly were getting guests, and then all of a sudden it was like a challenge for me. It was like, who else could I put on this show to talk D&D with? And it's been a good year and a half now almost with this show.
Something like that.
Crazy.
We've gotten to meet some cool people.
We've met some cool people. But chat, I know you're here. I see people chatting. If you have questions or you want to throw stuff up there, let us know.
It's a lot of talk about Skaven in there.
I see there's a lot of talk about Skaven, and I can't answer any of those questions on the Skaven other than the fact that they sound really cool.
I mean, just stereotype rats and I think that's the worst thing about Skaven is that they didn't get to go to space. I mean, it would be super easy just to
put a helmet on them.
Just put some mechanical bits on Skaven and put them in 40K, and everything will be fine.
I think at least Clan Scryer would have made it to space.
It'd have been fine, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and who's to say they're not tunneling one day? They tunnel into some warpstone, and then boom, they're suddenly in Eldar space.
Did you ever play Mordheim?
Very little Mordheim.
Yeah,
but I am aware of it.
I gotta start looking up more stuff. Man, y'all got me on goose chases right now.
there's so much Warhammer junk.
So Mordheim is Warhammer junk too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything is Warhammer junk. There's Blood Bowl.
Everything we've spoken about.
Blood Bowl, yeah.
Blood Bowl is basically playing football. It's a football game on a football field, but you use Warhammer minis, and there's the armies all have different little teams that you can field.
Blood Bowl on Super Nintendo.
The Blood Bowl's doing real good. They've had a few video games since then, but no, there's Necromunda, which is kind of an RP D&D type game. Where you have these gangs that level up and stuff. And then there's Rogue Trader. I would love to get a Rogue Trader game going. It's Warhammer D&D. Especially the Adeptus Mechanicus are always my favorite because anytime I've played Rogue Trader, I play an Adeptus Mechanicus, and if somebody else is playing one, we just sit there and make like the old 30 baud modem noises to each other all the time when we're doing mech speak. We're just like, we'll get excited or something. It's just a wild universe. And God bless them, even if GW continues to run it into the ground, it's still a lot of fun. But it's kind of like fifth edition, where they've done so many different editions, and there's so much lore, and they've rewritten it so many times that pretty much anything that you can make up, somebody has written as lore in 40K. Tim, have you ever heard the story about the rogue trader who he had an Eldar, which is basically a space drow on his ship?
I know what Eldar are.
Yes. So
Cut that one down.
he leaves the ship, and when he leaves, this rogue trader finds this little small dark pebble. It's like this purplish black hue. And so he takes it to this pleasure planet that he's going by, and he sells it to somebody there. Rocks on a couple months later, he comes back, and the guy's like, "Hey, where did you get that pearl?" And he's like, Eldar left it on my ship. Why? What's up? And he's like, "It's super drugs. Like, it's just super drugs. Like, if you take it, like, it's wild. I mean, and this is on a pleasure planet where pretty much all they do is drugs." So he tracks this Eldar down.
Where's this planet for?
Yeah, no. So he tracks the Eldar down, and he's like, "Hey, man, can I have some more of those pills?" And the Eldar's like, "Dude, that's our waste." So
I was gonna say that as a joke.
Yeah, it's dark Eldar poop is what it is, and he doesn't tell anybody on the pleasure planet. Buys just tons of the dark Eldar poop and just sells it on this pleasure planet for the rest of his life, and that's what he does. But just that's real lore that happened in Warhammer 40K. Somebody wrote that down, and it's canon.
That's crazy.
Like, that's the kind of nonsense that goes on when you have that many writers over 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that Pleasure Planet is an entire planet and not the name of like one specific club.
Yeah, it's a classification.
Like, welcome to Pleasure Planet.
That is a classification of planet in the Imperium of Man.
Wow.
Yeah. There's all kinds of fun stories about pleasure planets, like the time that there's these space alligators that are intelligent, and they just randomly teleport when they consume everything on a planet, and they just teleport it into a pleasure planet. Just suddenly 50-foot long sentient alligators destroying everything. It's an amazing world to live in.
It's an amazing world to live in. Walking down
I guess being
street,
on a pleasure
walking down the
planet doesn't
street.
come without its risks.
It's better than being on a hive planet, for sure, though. Because the rank and file for the Imperium is not great. But anyway, we've gone down that rabbit hole. But let's talk about Tim. Let's talk about your show.
All right, yeah. Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah.
All right. So I have a podcast called Knights and Nerds, and it's an actual play podcast, but I have a bit of a twist to it. So I wanted to do a podcast where I have these sort of like side episodes where it's just me talking about what's happening in the campaign. And I told my group when we started out, I was like, look, I'm going to be doing these episodes where it's just me, and I'm going to be telling basically everything that I'm planning, and you can't listen to them. And if you do, I will know it, and I will be very upset. And so I basically I wanted to have like a podcast where there was sort of that look behind the screen that might be helpful for some DMs who are maybe just starting or thinking about starting to do dungeon mastering, and were maybe curious about like, well, how do you adapt your story to the choices that the players make? Like, what do you do when they don't do what you want them to do? Stuff like that. So I would do like the actual play campaign, a pretty plot heavy story, which isn't always a good thing. But then I would have like every few months, I would do a sort of a catch up episode. Like, this is what happened in the last bunch of episodes. This is what I thought went well. This is what they did that I wasn't expecting. This is how it's kind of changing things potentially. And then like, here's what I've got planned for the next leg of episodes. And so I did that for the first campaign, which was 60 episodes. And close to the end of that first campaign, I actually had, I think, two different behind the screen episodes as we were like closing in on what was like the big finale. And I had two people, my friends Matt and Sarah, help me out with I'm like, I think that they're going to wind up here and have their last stand in this one place. And then so we like started talking about like siege battle, like siege encounters, like the fact that there's multiple enemies in the mix, like who do we take out first, who's the last one left, like who's the last big bad that they have to deal with, like all that. And then like 2 weeks later I messaged them like, hey, it's not going down like that at all. We gotta meet again. And so we met again, and like I think they're going underground back to this really spooky place. Here's what we think's gonna happen. They didn't do that either. So it's, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's kind of like a catalog of me being incorrect a whole bunch of times.
I think that could be every DM's like autobiography. Is just a series of me being incorrect.
Yeah. And so we started 2 new campaigns since that one ended in, I think it was like midway through 2020. And then I started up a new campaign with 3 new players, and then the original group, we're still doing Yawning Portal. And so I started with the new campaign that I'm DMing. I'm still doing those behind the screen episodes when I can. And one of our old players has taken on the mantle of DM for the Yawning Portal, and he's doing an amazing job. And I'm just having, like, I get to be a player, which is freaking amazing. Yeah, and I'm just having a blast.
How proud does that make you as a DM when one of your players like it takes on that mantle and like starts to become the DM, you know, and you've had a hand in that?
Well, yeah, he had like a really good like 2.5 year clinic on what not to do. So he was yeah, he's clearly taking notes like Tim fucked up again.
It's like Ben Franklin said, he didn't fail 1,000 times to make a light bulb. He invented 1,000 different ways not to make a light bulb. You know, I mean, eventually you get there.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of, like I said, and I know we were talking about this before, like behind the scenes and stuff, of like you see all the flashiness and stuff like that, but in the end, like our campaign has done the exact same thing. There's been moments I will throw game hooks at one of our players 3 to 4 times before I'm like, are you ever going to take this hook? Like,
yep. And then in the back channels after, we're like, what the hell was that? Like, this person was right here, and just
and it's funny because only the one player who this matched with their backstory and everything was great, and then all of a sudden they were like, even Matt was going, he's like, come on, like, it's right in front of you. Take the darn thing.
Go. But it's a great time. Even when they miss the plot hooks, because then you have to, especially if there's somewhere they have to go, you just have to move the railroad tracks. You know what I mean? And that's a lot of fun as a GM sometimes, is figuring out how you can move those railroad tracks so that they get to the right destination.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Missed plot hooks.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember in the first campaign, there were absolutely times when I like remember specific instances of NPCs warning certain players about like, hey, there's this new threat coming around, and then they didn't. It was not super crucial to the plot or to the like main arc, thankfully. But yeah, I guess in terms of, I think if we're just talking generally about plot hooks, you can have a main plot hook, and then sometimes you just put stuff out in front of your players, and
See what bites.
yeah, exactly. And if they don't go after something, then that's, you got to be cool with that as a DM. It's like if they're not interested, you don't want to shoehorn them into this path that they're not really that keen on.
Yeah.
That's the way I was running Dead Man Stomp in Chaosium's Call of Cthulhu thing, and one of the thing is the guy that had the trumpet in the module that was bringing this stuff back from the dead. Guy says that he gets the trumpet from Louis Armstrong, and my players, like, there was notes in there of what he said if they called him, and I was like, "Come on, guys, like, call him." And none of my players are doing it. I was like, "You have to let me like have you guys call Louis Armstrong." And by the end, they were like, "It's not like we could have called Louis Armstrong." I was like, "You absolutely can. Like, you can do that if you want." And they like whipped the car over, got into a telephone booth, and made the call. And I was like, "Yes." But that was one of those plots that they didn't really care that much about, but I did, and I wanted it to happen, and it hurt not seeing it happen.
But then it happened on stream, and you got to do it with it.
It did.
It did. What did they get out of calling him?
Absolutely nothing. It turns out the guy had been seeing a hallucination. One of the elder gods had come to him and took on that form because he knew that in Harlem, for a guy that was a trumpet player, that would be
the
guy. So they kind of found out that he wasn't lying because they had like done all their insight checks and stuff. They knew he wasn't lying. So if they called, they knew that he thought he saw him, type thing. So it could be a clue that something wasn't as it seemed, but really not much. It was just kind of cool.
It wasn't, but it was just kind of funny. And it was crazy though, because Chaosium is really good at tying all of the hooks together.
Yeah, they bulletproof their modules.
They've put so much into their modules that
Wow.
there's really no way to break the module unless you go way off. Like, take off.
It's great for one shots if you ever want to do one too, because just at any moment you can just kill your whole party or drive them insane like pretty easily. If you're like coming up on time.
It's not the game you want to be the hero. It's the game where you want to survive.
Yeah. Nobody really wins in Call of Cthulhu. You just go insane last. Because even if you succeed, part of your reward is you get some knowledge of the Cthulhu mythos, which also reduces your madness threshold. So, because it's knowledge that man wasn't meant to have. So part of it is that eventually you're going to go insane. Yeah.
Did you ever read The Ballad of Black Tom?
Yes, I did. It's really weird you mentioned that. That was my wife's book club book last month. It's actually a very good book.
Yeah, I dig it. It's so good. And I put a whole bunch of other books from that author onto my wish list. But the way that you were describing that sort of setting and the vibe reminded me a lot of that story.
Yeah, I'm a Cthulhu nut because I really like that era of history and the vibe that it had, and then just like unspeakable knowledge. Especially as a DM, it makes it really cool because you have these eldritch abominations, and the players are like, "What do they look like?" And if you run out of words, you can be just like, "Your mind can't comprehend the horror that you see in front of you," that kind of thing. It's a lot of fun to do as a DM. I really enjoy them. If you guys are ever looking for a one shot, you guys out there watching too, try them. Their starter box has like 5 adventures that are all really easy and really fun.
Yeah.
But
nice.
monsters.
So how did you come up with the plot for your adventure, Tim?
Oh, should we talk about campaign 1 since campaign 2 is ongoing?
Sure. Yeah. Let's talk about
probably.
Okay. All right. I guess spoilers for campaign, potential spoilers. I'll try to keep it as vague as possible, but we may venture into spoiler territory. So I started I wanted to do I knew that I wanted to use certain monsters very much. And I knew that I wanted to layer the sort of the information and confusion that the party would have to go through to figure out what is actually causing all of this weirdness in their world. And so that was kind of my starting point. And it was actually kind of weird because for me, the plot and the world were very meshed together. I wanted to answer like a lot of questions. One, like, are there dragons? If there are dragons, like, what is their function in the world? And that was like kind of my starting point, because I really wanted to start off with a campaign that was like just bonkers full of dragons. And then I was like, wait, no, I can't figure this out. So then I went the other way. I was like, no dragons, period, like none at all. It's like, where did they go? Well, they were all shunted off into the, like, there was a big dragon war. Okay, so then what happened? There's a this war here, two war heroes, and one was like sort of like this ultimate paladin, and another was like this crazy brilliant wizard who, you know, who teleported all the dragons, even the good ones,
Away.
to this other dimension, because the good ones weren't going to win, and that's what they had to do to save the entire world. And then, okay, well, then what happens? Well, all the dragonborn are evil, and they are pissed off, and they want revenge. And so, I started to come up with these various factions, and I kind of worked backwards from like where I wanted the players to end up, like the realization of like, here's what the real villains are, and
Right. How do we
here's,
get the players to
yeah,
there?
yeah, and the villains that were like in front of them at the very beginning, I made it seem like they were really directly responsible for a lot of bad stuff happening, and that may not have been true.
Tim,
So,
I have to ask, what year did your podcast start? The campaign one?
2018, I think. Yeah.
Man, I really wonder if my original DM was listening to your guys' podcast, because no joke, we had a world, my favorite campaign I've ever been in, and it's the only one I've ever gone from 1 to 20 in levels. We were in a world where the archmaguses from all of the other like multiverses decided to deal with their Tarrasque problem once and for all by teleporting all of the Tarrasques out of their worlds and onto our multiverse, or our part of the multiverse. So we were in a world where there were like 100 Tarrasques. So it was kind of like the inverse, where like you guys sent all the dragons away. In ours, all of the Tarrasques came, and it was just this horrible nightmare
you
hellscape.
wish you had those 50-foot alligators instead.
Yes. Yeah. Tarrasques were a real freaking problem. Luckily, most of them were asleep because they destroyed the world. But it's crazy. That sounds so like like different, but it sounds like he may have listened to that and got inspired. I'm gonna have to ask him, because that is really wild, some of the similarities. And we went through the same thing. Like, were they really bad guys? I mean, is it worth saving the rest of the multiverse from that plague of having Tarrasques at the cost of one planet?
One planet dealing with it while the rest of them are.
Yeah. Well, even if we'd been completely destroyed, would it still be worth it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's very curious. Tim, you and I could have some cool talks about D&D stuff for a while, because I really like that idea.
Yeah,
the first
and
campaign that I created, we did similar. We did it where there was only one of each dragon. That was it. So, and the reason that was is the dragons at the beginning of the world decided that they were going to work together to create the world, and after they did, one became extremely motherly and protective. The other wanted to see growth, and as the war crashed together, they pretty much tore themselves apart, which then created the metallic and the chromatic dragons. And then from there was only one, because it came from two elder gods. There was no other option. And finding out that probably about 6 to 9 months into it, one of our players decided they were going to dive into a myconid colony, which was being protected, which they were protecting a coral dragon, which was supposed to not exist. So when they spoke to the coral dragon, he found out that the dragons were actually lying to the entirety of the world. They destroyed all of the history of who the real god was, which is Alora, who is the mother of the world. And these were just her pets that have gotten out of control. And that's how the whole thing was created. So they were hunting these factions of chromatic dragons in order to protect their own people, and finding out that there was way more going on in the world at the end of our campaign. it was a fun twist to throw at everyone, and they were. I just remember jaws dropping, and it was probably one of my favorite moments because nobody else heard it but one player, because he was the one that decided to venture into the Myconid colony, and they were sitting there listening to it the entire session, and they're like, "We don't know any of this, do we?" And I was like, mm-mm. Only he does, because he's the only one that went and did the thing. And they're like, so then for like 3 episodes, he kept that to himself, and the players had to play it completely oblivious at the time.
I don't know, Tim. I'm excited though. I just texted my wife and told her to download the first campaign, because that's really exciting, and I'm excited to kind of hear how that played out versus what we did. That's really a super cool idea for a world build. That's super intriguing, and I like it a lot.
So breaking
Thanks.
down this, how then did you get your players to grab a hold? What did you have to? Did you tell them anything in the beginning, or was there just a, hey, create characters, and then you pulled them in the middle of the story, or did you get them ready before they had even started the story?
Yeah, we did have a session 0, and I kind of just said, you're here's what the setting is here, and I gave him like the sort of the general history of the kind of big points that they would know, that their characters would know, and I said, you're going to be in this particular place on this particular day, and your character has a need for money. And so I gave them this, the hook was, hey, there's this wanted fugitive. You can take them for like to the local, or the main lord here. This is like a high profile fugitive who's been in hiding. And you can get a pretty handsome reward. And that is when things kicked off in a not great way. This really powerful NPC was taken out of the picture immediately, which was awesome, because then I don't have to deal with the question of like, why don't we just ask the super powerful character to help us out? Like, there's none of that. Like, they're gone. Sorry, it's just you.
They're gone. You don't get to do that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Where's Elementor when you need him?
And so that was the hook. So I mean, for any, I would say for most groups, like, hopefully you don't have to say it in just those playing terms, but like, you can tell your players like, this is, I want your character to have at least this motivation. And as the relationship between dungeon masters and players, like, they should meet you at that point where they agree that, yes, we want to go on an adventure, and this is the bait that we're going to take, at least to get the ball rolling.
Right.
And and that was it for our group.
I think that's something that a lot of game masters, even me when I was a younger game master, I was like, how do I connect? Like, okay, I've got this cool idea, and this is what I want the players to do. How do I just let them know? Like, and then every game master I've talked to for the last 3-4 years now, very similar. They're like, no, you tell them right up front, like, this is the setting, this is where I need you to go.
It's part of the social contract.
It's just pointless for me for us to do this story. And I think that's because of the way that D&D is played now. It's not just the, Diablo-esque run in, kill the monster, run out, get the loot. You want to play that way? Not saying it's a bad way to play it. It's not the way I play it. But for people who like stories, it is nice to be able to follow a story from the beginning instead of trying to put that intro together first, like the prologue. You've got to kind of build up to that before you even start the game.
Yeah.
And I think
I get that, but at a certain point you have to say you met in an inn. And if they're like, well, you met at an inn.
You met at an inn.
Like at a certain point you just have to be like, okay, I get it. We'll get some of these big character bonding moments later, but you just gotta take that step with me. Just this one step, and then the journey will begin. So I get it, but sometimes you do have players who are just reticent, and they're just like, no, I need a concrete 1 million reason why I'm here, and just why am I at that here? Point, just give somebody else the contract on their soul or something, where they just have to do whatever that person says, and then they'll learn not to ask.
How about
Yeah,
you
the
not keep asking that question and you won't
Yeah.
have to deal with that issue?
Yeah.
with our newer campaign, I tried the whole um plot hook approach a bit differently. So I had them make their characters first, and I said, um, I told them like it's going to be a setting where magic is less common, and even though all of them use magic, uh, uh, I said like magic users are kind of like minor celebrities, but this is going to be sort of the general backdrop. But go ahead and make your characters, and then I had them bring their characters like fully fleshed out backstories and that they had met and discussed and planned out. And I actually built a lot of that around their backstory. So I had like those built in like from the get go. Like the plot hooks were already there. Like these are things that are happening that are specific to your characters' histories. Like,
Right.
yeah, episode one, like, hey, paladin of your oath of vengeance, your oath target is over there, and
Oh.
yeah.
Go get him.
Yeah.
And I like
Yeah.
those ideas too. I think they're really, it really just depends on how much time you have and how much time you've already put into it. I guess would be the best way to put it. Because how much time did it then take you after you've gotten all those backstories together before you could actually launch the event or the
Yeah,
campaign?
it's definitely not something I would recommend like doing. It is kind of like planning your campaign on like with a harder degree of difficulty, because you're gonna have to wonder like what happens if one of them dies. Like so much is built around the arcs of these characters that it would be not a insurmountable challenge, but
Right.
it would be
And I think
something
at
that you
that point,
have
it's
to work
hard to
toward.
know where the ending is going to be on that because it kind of has to
Mhm.
just fall together, right?
Mhm.
It's not just a, hey, the ending, like I know where the end has to go if it's my story that I've got the end and I've got the beginning. Now I just got to fill in the middle. It's different when you go, okay, players, I'll give me your stuff. Let me see where I can weave the web together. But what once they've all fulfilled their small little ideas, then what? Like, what do I? How do I connect this to make it deeper, to make it bigger? Um, and I guess at that point, it kind of comes down to the NPCs they meet, the connections they make, because you kind of got to drive those emotional strings at that point because now it's no longer just a big story thing. It's why are they invested? Why are your
Yeah.
players now pushing forward again?
Yeah. And something else that we did is, and this is something that can help uh, a DM like really generate plot hooks very easily, is like look up a character questionnaire. So not just like filling in the stuff that's on their character sheet, like what's your ideal and your bond and your flaw,
Mm-hmm.
but like answering other questions like who's your family, like where did you grow up, who have you wronged, like who's your worst enemy, who's your best friend,
Right.
what's like a secret you don't want anybody to know, um stuff like that. So like all that is extraneous to the 3 pages you get for your character sheet, but that can really help a DM come like bring a lot more to their stories. And like, okay, so maybe here would be a good part to like, I've noticed this, maybe this player is not super invested, maybe it's a good part to bring in like somebody from their backstory that they know, like they cross paths and they make a connection sort of thing.
No, I like that. I really do. And I did that on one of my campaigns. I did realize it was a lot tougher because I was like, okay, how do I tie A, B, and C together? Where does C connect? Like, but it was a lot more rewarding, I think, for the players when I did it that way. And I think that was the bigger difference. Um, and I've tried a lot of new things since I started professionally game mastering because sometimes you just get really strange um, different personality types and all that stuff. So it's really hard sometimes to tie all that in. Or you have a lot of people who are like, I don't want to use anything you're going to give me. I want to do my own thing, and this is my thing, and this is where I want to go. Um, so I've moved partially back to modules because I think they work just wonders for stuff like that.
Hmm.
And then I just let the players, whatever your decision is, and a lot of stuff I get new players. So I take those 10 to 12 backgrounds that they throw in their backstories that they throw, and I say, hey, you don't have to pick one of these 10, but if you want to, here's 10 of these, pick these. and then that instantly ties them into that commonality. Like I think that was just a really cool way of doing it. And then they can branch off and write as much as they want on that backstory, but they've got that little bit of a connection to it, so that I know for at least the main story, everybody's driving in the same direction. Nobody's trying to, drive the other direction.
Right.
Um, but yeah, if you're just letting your players all write it up, and then at the end of it, you're like, okay, see if I can get everybody on the right train now.
Yeah.
Let's see if this works.
Yeah.
And I know we're running low on time, but
Yeah.
I do say that's one of the things that I really love about Goo Cube's adventure modules is everybody starts out with this weird blood touch thing that makes everybody hate them, and they all live in this carnival together. So you can have a chaotic evil party member who still has a vested interest in a lawful good party member because they depend on each other to cook dinner, to protect them from the townies who are coming in to try to kill them all, to
The mundane, not
yeah.
just the crazy.
And it's super, that's super helpful as a GM to be like, they're like, well, why would I help this person when they're doing this? It's because they're your family.
Right.
Whether you're actually family or not, they're your family and you depend on each other.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah. I will say, like, for me, like I don't have to, I don't really DM for strangers. Like I haven't done James, what you're describing, like rolling up and tackling that challenge with like a brand new group that I'm really unfamiliar with. So it's kind of easier that way, because all the people that I play with on the show, like they were friends outside of the podcast, and we all like hang out and talk and stuff, and also like they know that they're on a podcast, and they're kind of keenly aware, like, well, let's not mess with Tim too much. They're not on rails, but they know that like probably best not to just straight up murder like the sort of
main NPCs that you're
exactly. Yeah. So there's certain elements in what I do that really work in my favor that may not translate super well to somebody
no, I completely
like rolling up with a
agree,
new group.
because, and we've had that conversation on stream before, where it's like, hey guys, this isn't the back, the kitchen table D&D game. Like, don't just start going around murder hoboing, because we're gonna have to have a different conversation about what's going on. But they're really good at it.
Until I started saying that people could give me $1 and I would pickpocket whatever NPC I was in front of. People really started tipping dollars in the stream.
It didn't break the game, but it was absolutely hilarious. And
yeah, I was pickpocketing like crucial people's brothers and sisters.
He just randomly, it was like, hey, I'm talking to this person. Anybody who throws me $1 on or 100 bits, I'll pickpocket the person, or the person I'm talking to.
Yep.
And he was pickpocketing.
I was ready for the consequences, though. I just happened to roll nothing but 19 and 20s on the die.
Yeah,
that whole session.
A whole session, he was rolling nothing lower than a 15.
Yeah.
And I was not rolling anything higher than a 10. So
you never are. But anyway,
when I do, it hurts. I'm just telling you. When I do hit, it hurts. It just doesn't happen very often.
So James guesses. I put no toe tiny people.
Well, that's wrong.
That's probably not right.
That's wrong.
It starts with a U, definitely an aberration. Is another guess that we have.
Can anybody say what it is?
I don't think I could say that word like if I spelled it out.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to try to type it out, you can type it out. But yeah, like for anybody else in the chat room, we got a few more minutes left. Normally we throw this up in the halftime, but we were way too gone in Warhammer for a little bit.
Yeah, Warhammer. Oh God, I could do a whole show on just Warhammer and dumb lore, because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, but if you do guess it, if you definitely try to guess it, because the person that guesses it's going to get a small gift card from Nerdy Chicken, which is our sponsored giveaway tonight. So thanks to Tim and Knights and Nerds podcast. So,
and maybe next time we'll tell the story about how the Lord of the Vampires was saved from the destruction of all unholy because he bit a Nurgle follower and had horrible diarrhea.
Oh, wow.
And how that's Warhammer canon.
That's the Warhammer.
That's how Vlad von Karstein was saved during the apocalypse of the end of the old world and the beginning of Age of Sigmar. It's a great story.
Is anybody else going to guess? Because if not, we're going to give it to.
Let's try to get let's get it in the ballpark. Let's get it in the ballpark at least.
If you can get in the ballpark, you'll win. What does that shape look like?
If we just loot, did everybody just log into our thing and then go away?
Can't use the gift card.
The gift card? Why not?
Maybe did they work for Nerdy Chicken?
Is that from? Are you from Nerdy Chicken? If you are, hello. Welcome.
I mean, it is a shop up in Canada, but they will ship to the US.
Yeah.
They got some really nice dice trays.
We do get some people due to some of our guests that are over on the other side of the
not viable in your country.
Not viable in my country. Oh, all right.
We got to figure some digital stuff out at some point.
We do. We're gonna figure digital stuff out. I think when we launch our next show, we'll be doing that too. So
don't talk about that too much.
I'm not talking about it anymore.
Oh my God, James! I'm gonna do Monster Warhammer.
No, you're not. We're not doing Monsters of Warhammer.
I haven't talked about Warhammer with people in a long time, and now I've got a problem.
No, you got a problem.
I mean, I think, yeah, Chaos Spawn. I think there should be a 5e version of Chaos.
There should. Just if you're serving an evil god and they don't like you, boom, Chaos spawned.
It's like what happens to regular humans, like Lolth turning a drow into a drider.
Yeah,
worse.
Yeah,
it's like.
But there's more.
It's like that Cronenberg episode of Rick and Morty.
Yeah,
mixed with John Carpenter.
Yeah, especially it really sucks because you think you're getting turned into a demon prince, which has all kind of cool bells and whistles, and then instead you're just like a writhing mound of flesh for all of eternity.
It's kind of like, what are those things? The lemurs.
The lemurs. Lemurs that turn into writhing mounds of flesh. I don't like that at all.
No, isn't that a lemur? A lemur?
Oh, a lemur. Yeah.
Not a lemur.
You're talking about the low level demons. Yes, that we played in that.
I thought you were talking about those cute little rodents.
We did.
No.
We did a game where Casey GM'd and we all played lemurs in a 5e adventure, and it was really funny.
Yeah, and it's literally that's all they are is their flesh. Just
they're like little flesh golem dudes.
Yeah.
Kind of like that, but worse.
Oh god. Well, if not, I don't know.
I guess we can save the gift card till next stream.
Till next stream, or we can throw it up on social media and do the.
Yeah, we can do some kind of giveaway on social media. Yeah,
okay. That's what we'll do then. So
fine then. You don't get to know what it is.
Fine then. You don't get to find out what it is. You have to wait until it showed up on social media. So if you,
I think that means that the closest
checked our social media out, this is when you want to sign up.
I think that means that the closest guess was No Toad Tiny People.
It was, but Matt, you're not getting
it. Yeah, that's also not a good guess at all.
It is not. Like I said, but yeah, and it's
whatever you guys want to do. Like if you want to do it on social media, or if you want to give it to whoever's closest in the chat.
Well, that's the thing is we've only had one person guess,
and
they can't because of their country.
They're shipping
access it.
I feel bad.
So that's what I said.
We will get it to somebody that will make a good use of it. I promise. Right. Whether it's on this show or social media or another one of our shows, we'll get it to somebody.
We can always give it away on a Sunday show too.
Yep.
Cool.
Where we have a lot larger viewing audience. Yeah. But that was an awesome time. I enjoyed that.
It was a lot of fun. Like I said, we don't come here to the tavern to expect a lot of people. When we get a bunch of people coming in and they want to talk, we talk. Driving. Give me 5 to answer. Okay. We're closing down. Best way to do it, personally, best way to do it is to.
Who said that?
That was 13 Oucher.
13 Oucher.
It's one of your folks.
Yeah.
I think it is. And he probably knows exactly what it is.
If he knows what it is, I say we give it to him. I tell you what, I've got to go to, James and I have to go to a meeting after this. Yeah. I tell you what, 13 Oucher, if you will, I'll hang around in this chat room. And if you can message me what it is and you're close, we'll write you down as the winner. How's that sound?
Either that or hey, come on, be the first person on social media to type it up.
Yeah.
And then, so if you go to our social media on Instagram, it's Tabletop Misfit because somebody stole my name. Oh,
Hey, thanks, Eldor.
And yeah, if you go on there under episode 20 or under Tavern Talks 35, say the plot thickens, and there'll be a little icon there. If you want to type the monster in that little in there, the first person to type that from the channel, we'll give you a head start until the end of the night, and then at the beginning at the beginning of tomorrow we'll post it up again stating, hey, if nobody's guessed at that point, first person to guess it gets a $15 gift
So
card.
13 oucher, if you go over there and say, hey, this is 13 oucher, I'm guessing this, then we'll give you first shot.
Yeah,
We'll give you right of first refusal. Okay. Yeah, that was a good time.
It was.
We're running horrendously late to our next meeting, but it was
okay.
worth it.
But normally we don't, but this has been a great talk, and
It has, and we
Yeah,
started.
I
thank
would
you.
continue to stay.
Thank
on
you so much for
truthfully.
having me.
Like I said, I would stay on and continue to chat. Sadly though, we have another meeting we have to run to literally right after this.
Yeah, and Tim, I'll send you the contract in the mail. We'll start a Warhammer show where I tell you about dumb new Lorehammer, and then you get angry, and we just complain on stream for a couple.
I would
hours
love that. Yes, please.
We have spawned a new Tabletop Misfits show on Mondays at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
No, don't take that. That is not true. But yeah, if you want to come hang out with us, our next show will be on Sunday. We'll be returning back to our normal campaign after a long hiatus due to conventions and
Deaths in my family.
Deaths in Matt's family. And a lot of other things that have just been going around throughout the cast. But yeah, we're going to pick that back up with our original guest, Shadow, who's going to continue to play one of our characters. And yeah, all of our shows are at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then they're VODed to YouTube about 48 hours afterwards. So definitely come check us out if you will. Throw us a follow, all that fun stuff. Make sure you hit the bell icon. Subscribe if you can. If you can give us Bezos money, please do, because it helps us out a ton just to get the extra amount of equipment that we need.
We do love Daddy Bezos.
My drink's empty, which means it's time to close the tavern down. So we will see you guys all again next time on Tavern Talks.
Bye.
Oops, that's not.
James.